Take your CJ7 all the way to 11. Jeepin' with Cool Guy.
Good evening. Tonight, on this episode of Jeepin' with Cool Guy, we're going to install this onto that. What is this? This is the Jeep Borg Warner T5 transmission. I had it rebuilt by this awesome team in Indianapolis. I'll actually put their stuff in the comments. I highly recommend these guys. They specialize in this type of stuff. Prices are amazing, turnaround's quick, they know what they're doing. And I mean, I got this thing back, it's painted, it's cleaned up, it's perfect, love it. Anyways, I also want to show you how to put together the mounting components, because I can't find anything on the web about it. And then we're going to install it. Let's do it. Okay, let's make this pretty simple. The T5 transmission, I think the T4 has the same kind of configuration, has two mounting areas on the bottom part of the actual, I guess this is the main, this is the section that actually connects to the transfer case. But what you need is your mounting plate, and this has, let me see if I don't want to flip it up too much. But anyways, it has a curvature to it. You want to make sure that the curvature is pointing down, and then it has 4 holes in it. There is a mounting bolt here, a mounting bolt here, a mounting bolt here, and then here is the custom bolt that, if you've watched my other transmission, my video on how to take the transmission out, this is the piece that I cut off because I couldn't get it going and it was really kind of obnoxious. But you can get this specific bolt from the link. I think I got it from Quadratech, but I'll put that in the comments too. And then this just goes in through here. These are poly bushings that I got as a whole set. I think they're Daystar. And what this does is it helps to control the torque twisting of the actual transmission, and this mounts this piece and this piece, both mount into the cross member / skid plate. So now, just in preparation, I would suggest putting down some kind of a rag or something on your skid plate. We're going to pick up our transmission and we're going to see how easily we can slide it into that notch, and as carefully as we can slide it into that notch. Alright, remember, lift with your legs, not your back. I already know that this thing weighs a ton, so let's see how this goes. Well, it might be a little bit harder than I thought. Okay. I'm breathing heavy because this is not easy. Wow. What I'm finding is that the main drive spindle shaft needs to go through the throwout bearing. Very tight fit. So I would suggest throwing some grease on the inner ring of your throwout bearing. Red grease on the end of the drive shaft of the transmission, because it has to fit right perfectly into the teeth there. So you have to get those aligned, and that's just a matter of kind of, this would be great if it was a two-man job, or if you had an axle or a transmission lift or something like that. But you have to get the angle of this thing up high enough. You have to put this thing in there at the right angle, and then at the same time rotate your back drive shaft here so that you can get those teeth aligned while kind of just bumping it until you get it grooved. And then at that point, you gotta keep going, slowly wedging it in. And then on the inside of that, right on the tip of the drive shaft, is a brass ring, really thick brass ring, about that thick, about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch thick, that has the clutch wick on the side of it, which is just an oiled piece of foam for the most part. So you're kind of really threading the needle here So obviously I'm not there yet, but I'm getting really close. I got it all the way up to the point where the drive shaft housing on the transmission was right up against the bell housing, and it just wouldn't go in. I couldn't get the angle right. It was shifted too far to the left. So kept trying to push it. When you get to a point where something doesn't fit, you probably have something out of alignment. So I took the transmission, I took it out, took off the bell housing, then the drive plate, and realigned everything. When you do this, what you're supposed to do is, if you're going to replace your clutch cover and your clutch plate, the drive plate, you're supposed to mark on the flywheel where this clutch cover was, so that you can put it all back in place in the exact same spot. Same thing with marking where the clutch of the drive plate is. But I replaced everything on this. So I replaced the flywheel, the cover, the plate, the drive plate, all of it. So I didn't have the opportunity to mark it. But the problem with that is that you have to be absolutely dead on when you use your clutch alignment tool in making sure that that is in the right place. So this fits inside of a brass ring on the inside. And I found that while I was trying to wedge it in there, I dented that brass ring. I didn't do any damage that has to be replaced, but not ideal. Point is, when you're putting this back on, you want to make sure that you've got this thing as centered as you possibly can. I might have to do this 2 or 3 more times just to get it right, which kills me to think about it, but okay. Okay, so I'm trying to be more methodical about it this time. What I did is I did a dry run before I put the bell housing back on, just to make sure that I could get the main drive shaft into the pilot bushing in through the drive plate, and just to kind of see how tight that was. And it is very, very tight. So this has to be very accurate. But what I'm going to do now is I'm only going to put on the bell housing in 1 bolt, because all the other crap you can put on later, so that I don't have to take all of it off and all the way back on. So I'm going to try it right now to see if I can get this thing in there and if it's the right alignment or not. So here we go. So I've got this thing in there as tight as I can get it in right now. So if it has to be tight, it has to be actually in that pilot bushing in there, because this is only about an 1/8 of an inch gap. So from here, I'm going to just attach the bolts and basically draw the transmission into the engine. Right, so I've got 4 grade 5 stainless steel bolts. I believe these are 5/8. I think so. At least that's in the head. And there's 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. It's a fairly simple assembly. So I'm going to put these in, just kind of get them finger tight. And then I'm going to tighten up the bell housing here so that that's nice and tight. And then I'm going to pull this all in. I'm going to do the 2 big ones that actually bolt straight into the engine block and the corners here. Get these nice and tight. They don't have to be torqued up. These don't have to be torqued up. I think they're 45 foot-pounds. Yeah, the 2 here are 45. I think the rest of these are all 35. We'll double check here in just a moment, but I just want to get this tightened up. I'm putting a washer on the back part of this bolt because there's a nut on here, and these, from what I've seen, this back cover plate has a tendency to, well, since it's aluminum, it's not going to be very strong, but it has a tendency to kind of buckle the washer. So put a nice big thick washer on the back of this thing and you won't actually bend your aluminum plate as a result. So now we need to put on the transmission mounts to the skid plate. And the transmission mount bolt, which I showed you earlier in the video, I originally thought that I could just jack up the transmission connected to the engine and mount this in. I don't think that's really going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jack this up as far as I can go, and then I'm going to disconnect this side of the skid plate, push it down, push the bushings on it, and then I should be good to go. Alright, just disconnected the skid plate. Slide this plate down a little bit. Take your washer and your bushing, slide it over the top of this sucker. And then like that. And then you go back up through here. And put this on there just for now, just to keep it aligned. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to put the skid plate back on. Everything's been mounted in. This bolt, you need to have a 3/4 wrench, regular wrench, and put it underneath the kind of the nut part of this bolt. It's the only way that you can actually tighten this one up. It's the same for the bottom nut down below. This was kind of a pain in the butt. One thing I will tell you, don't tighten anything up. The skid plate, mounting bolts, bell housing to transmission, until you get all of the bolts in. And the reason behind that is because you've got a lot of alignment to do, and tightening one up may throw another one off. So lightly do it. Make sure that the only thing that you're putting, you finger tighten all these things in. Use a screwdriver with the hole, the bolt hole, to kind of move things around to get them aligned, because this thing is not an exact science. It's my only piece of advice for you is make sure that you don't tighten anything up until you get every bolt into place and finger tight. Then you can start tightening everything up. That was very difficult, but we have the transmission in. It is mounted. Now we just need to go ahead and put all the other bolts on for the bell housing and the starter and so on. That's nothing big. Stay tuned.